What's popular, YouTube? Another day, another demo, and finally today is the day where we round out the top 5 of my prediction list for HLTV's top 20 players of 2020. Are you ready for this? It's not who you were expecting. Everybody had a lot of guesses, okay? People seem to be so sure who was going to come in at the number 5 spot, but this year has been full of surprises. Today is going to be another one, all right? We had Ziwu coming in at second after Simple. My guess is Simple wins slightly in the stats for HLTV. That one I'm not 100%, I'm 55% confident Simple here. And then Device, always the groomsman, never the groom. Third place as the player who, hey, he wins everything. I don't think he's too concerned with taking the number 1 best player slot. Always in the top 5 and usually in the top 3. Device at number 3. And then in number 4, where things maybe start to get a bit interesting, we've got Nico coming in hot. A very strong year overall. And carried FaZe even when FaZe was down, came on to G2, really hot start on G2. All the stats are pointing to green, not a single negative event in the year so far, and that is even with a couple of teams who have had a lot of struggle. So had to give Nico that placing. And now the player that nobody was expecting to be here, okay? A player who, didn't come anywhere close to this last year. The player who none of you thought was going to be in the number 5 spot. I'm just kidding. It's Rops. Of course it is. Rops has to be in number 5 right after Nico. And I'm so glad I get to get it off my chest now, because yesterday when I was doing the Nico video, I kept wanting to say Rops. I even did say Rops in the middle of the game when we were watching the demo. And it was because I was trying not to draw parallels to him without, to not foreshadow what today could be, to keep it fun and interesting. But now that we have cleared the air, I pointed out the enormous pink elephant in the room that is, this debate between Rops and Nico for who I think will be on the HLTV top 5. We could talk about why and add some context to this situation. So between Nico and Rops, and as is with everybody in this top 5, as I kind of pointed out with my really scientific MS Paint drawing to describe what people's ratings look like and how the top 5 looks compared to everybody else. And yes, it does seem like in the top 3, you're kind of a cut above. And then outside of that, it is a very, very tight race all the way back to the end at top 20. And part of that reason is because, it is just a statistical thing. So we look at Rops here. He had one negative event, one negative event in the year. I actually think this was, I don't know if I have this I'm not sure if I'm looking at this properly. Let me go back. Let me go, Rops. I'm pretty sure there was one more negative event. Of course, Nico had a flawless record, and I really gave a lot of credence to that. Even though, they are just HLTV rating stats, I didn't think necessarily that should be the end-all, be-all. This is, again, a prediction list for the HLTV top 20. Okay, it looks like, I swear to God, I had another event where it looked like he had an earlier negative rating. Maybe it was just a negative KD at DreamHack Fall. But here, this was, of course, the last event that they played. And this was where, the whole team really just got trounced after having a very, very strong couple of previous tournaments to the rivals that they lost to. So Astralis, they lost 3-1 in the finals of DreamHack Masters, but Europe. But it came close, and I think they could have they came on a coin flip on Nuke, and they could have potentially won Vertigo, and then it would have been 3-1 in their favor. So I think that was a very close series. But when we swapped over to this event, they just got completely dumpstered, and this was a rough event for Rops. So I kind of want to so we look at, basically the narrow margins that rest on who is better within Rops or Nico in terms of statistics is an interesting story to talk about. But to kind of add life to those statistics, I want to kind of describe what I feel like is the difference between Rops and Nico as players. Again, we have a situation where these players are in terms of who is a better rifler, like more talented, or who would win on Op India 1v1 or on aim underscore map 1v1, like that doesn't actually matter, right? It's about how good you are in that vacuum. But then you take like you say, oh, okay, they're at the peak of mechanical skill. That's one criteria. But then you take that player, put them in a server with other talented players, and then see how they perform. And that's where the conversation should really begin. And when we look at that, right, we both know that Rops and Nico are at the top of their game. They're both incredible riflers. They are both jumping this year by at least, I mean, even if I'm wrong on this, by at least 5 spots each from last year, which is amazing to see. A huge reason is, of course, because last year, or 2019, with the Grand Slam run, was a very big year for NA. It had Elysian top 4, which that seems like the most interesting spot these days. And then we have Electronic kind of consistently here with Magisk, and then Nafly, Breeze, and Twist all taking up 7, 8, and 9, which is really, really cool to see for NA. Of course, this year is a little bit different, and we'll get to see why. But that's also where it gets very tricky to decide who actually does take those spots based on the results that we've seen. But yes, when I talk about Nico and I talk about Rops, I do, let's see, we go top 20 teams here for how we look at this. One thing that was interesting here that actually had my attention was the fact that Nico fell off playing a high amount of maps versus Big, but actually never really performing well versus Big, whereas Rops, it was the actual complete opposite story. Now, for me, and you can debate with me on this, but this year, I think because of the nature of online and then seeing certain teams rise in this year specifically, has everybody a little bit hesitant and questioning whether or not that'll last into a LAN environment. Nobody's going to question whether Nico and Rops are going to last into a LAN environment, but people might question whether or not Heroic and Big, for example, are going to be able to continue on the results into like LAN when that comes back. I don't want to delegitimize this year for Big because they had amazing results all the way up until the end of the year. But when I look at these stats and I look at what may be more important, I think I would still rate their like Rops and Nico's performances versus a team like Vitality, more so even a team like Astralis after they started, like they got the original lineup again and they started to look very, very good. And then a team like G2 or Mousesports in Nico's position, which this is actually interesting because he actually, versus G2 was also a big one, but they're also a team who came up in a huge way this year as well. But I think, yeah. So when we look at their stats versus these other teams, like, okay, Rops actually plays well versus Astralis, and we're going to look at a Rops game versus Astralis right now because there was a couple of actually very amazing matches from him versus Astralis, but it's not like either of them struggle necessarily versus Astralis. They both play very well versus Astralis in general, and that's just an important thing because you don't win tournaments if you can't play well versus Astralis. That's just the bottom line. So for a lot of teams, it's actually just very important to be, first of all, good. Like, for example, this was something that MIBR had in the year that they had Stewie and Tarek. And Stewie told me once, he's like, you ever wonder why we always play so well versus Astralis and not well versus other teams? And he said it's because the way that Fallen always studied the game was in the context of Astralis. And that would mean that they could get to a tournament and beat Astralis and lose to another team. There was like ECS season 8 or 7 or whatever in Arlington where they beat Astralis in the regular. They beat Astralis in the tournament to knock them in the lower bracket and then lost them in the grand finals by like 1 round. But they consistently were always putting up a really, really strong fight versus Astralis. That MIBR had these stats to prove it. But other teams could still beat them, which is an interesting problem. Now, the thing about Astralis is they are never a team that would typically lose to players or teams outside of the top 5 or top 10. That was part of why they are such a long-standing championship organization, is because they are able to have consistency and not allow upsets in. Whereas, Navi might lose to every team in the CIS and then, be able to also beat Astralis but randomly lose otherwise. You can't find consistency that way. You have to have a high skill floor on your team in order to, win whole events, which is an interesting thing. So anyways, back to Nico and Rops. When we compare them, these are very close, right? There's some interesting discrepancies, the big and the big on with Nico and the big with Rops. And all overall, no red flags about any of the, performances or like ratings overall. The only, maybe I think this Vitality one, G2 one being the bottom of the list for Rops was something that I brought into kind of a question, but of course, this is an important one for Big, for Nico with Big, and he didn't really perform extraordinarily well versus them. But anyways, this isn't what it came down to for me. So I'd say overall, having no negative events for Nico is one thing. And then just talking about something that I feel like I have to with Rops, and that is that he is a player who, in his positions, in this style of Counter-Strike that oh god, not again. Damn it, I forgot to turn that off. In the positions that Rops plays, on the T side, especially, it is one where he sometimes, even if he has the skill, I want to be so careful about how I word this, okay? Because I love Rops, but he is not afforded the ability by his own self to take over a game because of his position and role, and I don't want to blame Kerrigan for that, okay? So I think that, we take, like, let's say Rops on Dust 2, where he'll be the lower tunnels lurk. It's a very hard lurk. It really shines a light on kind of what kind of player he is. He's the guy who, it's like you do not, it's like Havel is holding the upper tunnels, and you do not want to walk in there. You'll die, right? So he controls that part of the map. You can't walk, push upper B because Rops will beat you, because Rops is the most, he's the librarian with a monocle, right? He's the librarian with a microscope. Okay, he's careful about every single detail, every single angle. You're just never going to outduel him, and he never loses focus. He has this incredible ability to stay concentrated for an entire round. It feels like, when you're holding an angle and you're waiting for a fight, it feels like Rops is doing that at every single second of the round. That's what's insane about Rops. Like, that's just pure stamina that I can't get over. Like, I don't see other players that are quite as on point at every single moment of a round. I think that's a huge reason why he is such a good rifler. But because he is in the upper tunnels, because his nature as a player is to be so careful that it's almost debilitating sometimes, that he can only have so much impact on the round, right? So when Mousesports were struggling, when, Kerrigan, Frozen, and BMass, while he was still getting good, and Chris J would like run out long doors, and I'm using a specific example because I just have this demo playing back in my mind. If they couldn't trade running out of the long doors, Rops cannot win the round, right? Rops is not in a position to come in and save the day. He just cannot. He moves at a certain pace, and sometimes it feels like the amount of talent that he has in certain rounds is wasted because of his teammates who are unable to like put up their share. Now that story has changed a lot for Mousesports. Kerrigan has, since getting a new coach to help him out with the preparation, has shown that he's taking time for his individual game and changed the nature of his performances in a huge way. Chris J did the same thing. Frozen got so much better towards the end of the year, and BMS did too. And that's the reason that Mousesports' results got a lot better. But I think in the first half of the year, it really showed that because of the way that Rops is as a person, and this is how he describes it. He says some people, I think he said this in an interview with Thorn. I watch a lot of these content pieces, interviews and stuff like that, so I just regurgitate it, but this is a recent one. And he said that some players, when they have an advantage, they will just take a risk. At a certain point, they'll get tired, they'll get bored, they'll get lazy, and then they'll run and take a risk. But he said the reason he believed he was always so much better or more consistent in like FPL when he was coming up was that when he had an advantage, he didn't let it go. And that is awesome. At a certain point, it looks like he's baiting. At a certain point, it looks a little bit selfish. But if everybody was on the same page, and as long as you have the clock in mind and you're playing clock down CS at all times, that might be the very scariest way to play the game. But with the way that Mousesports played, it was this dichotomy between Rops, who was having a position where that style of play made perfect sense, and then the rest of his team being crazy, flying out of long doors like spider monkeys, but then not having the ability to, like, not the individual skill to trade or something like that, and then leaving Rops in positions where he can't win the round. And I think for that reason, Rops' stats did get a little bit inflated on some of the games earlier on in the year. Towards the end of the year, I think everything was there. The gears were greased, right? I think everything on the team was working so much better, and Rops never changed. I wouldn't say he changed too much. Everybody else just got better, which allowed him to have more impact. Okay, so I just want to be very careful about the way I describe this, but that is how I look at Rops. Whereas Nico, I feel like he can really, and you can argue with me about this if you want to, but I feel like even though I'm not sure how I think about Nico in terms of like how good he makes teams, I think he can take over a game a little bit more easily and more consistently. What do you think about that? Because I've thought about this for way too long, but this is from a combination of watching all the CS this year, thinking a lot about Rops, especially this year, and then looking at, some of the games from Nico that he's played even after I like doubted him a little bit, just to see how, he can really just, like, I feel like be a one-man army to win a game. And I feel like Rops naturally, because of the person he is, cannot actually be at that level as an individual. Now, do not conflate that for I don't like Rops. Okay, I don't want to read those comments. That is so annoying to when people, it's like you make a prediction for a team to win and they're going like, why do you hate FaZe? It's not why do I hate FaZe? It's who I thought was going to win. Does that make sense? So I just think that, maybe you think, all right, well, I know someone's going to be like, oh, well, yeah, that's so overrated. Like, no one can play with a player like Nico, and like not everybody should be like that. That's not relevant. Okay, this is about who is as an individual able to have more impact in games, whether or not the team is doing well, and just shows that as an individual is a little bit more flexible and also puts up consistent stats. And we are resting on very razor thin margins when it comes to the numbers here. That's just my opinion on the play styles and what I've seen in the matches. God, I'm like really bracing myself to read these comments. I promise you, I've thought about this for as long as it's healthy. But all right, so now we're already like well into this. This is an interesting one for me for sure. But let's go ahead and look at the game. Look at the game now. So this is a match, DreamHack Winter Europe. I think this is one of the most interesting matches for me of the year, because it was a map of Counter-Strike that number one was a complete stomp. Okay. Let's look at Mousesports. Oh, yeah. Let me draw your attention to these stats real quick. Okay. So in the head-to-head, I'm going to, first of all, check out DreamHack Masters here. Look at them run through this bracket, by the way. And that's not all the games they played, is it? Because they had a... Oh, they just have the one map stomp here versus... Yeah, okay, here it is. So 16-3 for Mousesports. Why is this interesting? Because as far as I'm concerned, Astralis had the very best Inferno in the world. I think the next team up is Vitality. And then maybe Vitality is even better now because they won they stomped them in the head-to-head matchup, but this is something where it feels like there's going to be a learning period between the two teams, and they're going back and forth. Anyways, look at what happened here, okay? So we had a very strong map win streak here. Also, I was so tilted to read a comment that said I'm biased against Astralis. Could you be any more Danish? I'm like people like I can't, dude. I can't. With people who say I am biased against Astralis, like I literally have the belief today that Vitality and Astralis are like the only two teams worth watching at the moment. Everybody else is just catching up. That's what I believe. I guess I'm so tilted when I read stuff like that where people call me biased. But the truth is, they're the ones who are biased. They're so biased that when they hear something, they can't think of it outside of the lens of the fact that they're from that country. They're a huge fan of that team, so that no matter what they hear, it sounds negative. I can't, dude. I can't. I had to get that off my chest. All right. Here is the map win streak. Okay, and now there's a few spots on the record. But in total played mouse sports, let's look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1 loss to Navi, 10, 11, 12, and then 16-3. They had not this year lost in a way. This is their biggest loss of the year to Mouse Sports. Okay, this is the game that we're going to watch, and we're going to find out how this is possible. This is not a map that Mouse Sports were supposed to win, and this was something that was incredibly interesting. Now, here was also the swing loss to Vitality, but then they came back and won 16-5 at the Global Challenge versus Vitality right after that. So this is a rivalry that we'll see develop into the next year. That'll be very interesting. But this is the game that we're going to watch. How did Mouse Sports do this? And guess who was such a key piece of this puzzle? First of all, I think BMAS actually had a better map than Rops on this one. I want to shout him out for that. But, you know, these guys, 116 ADR. I mean, he was just putting up numbers. But here's, 23 kills and officially a better rating for Rops. Let's find out how. We're talking about BMAS a lot in this game, but let's go ahead and look at one of the most impressive wins for Mouse Sports with Rops at the helm of things and look and see it. Why he was able to have so much impact and what it really looked like. Oh my god, I talked a lot already. I got a new mixer, so hopefully the audio issues are fine. I did a bunch of test recordings today, and I want to make sure everything's good. I think I got the audio levels up. Compressor, there's a built-in compressor in this one, and I actually think I need to increase the volume of the game a little bit. We'll see if that's a bit too loud. But yeah, hopefully the volumes are better for these videos now. With this compressor, I got a Go XLR Mini. I saw some really cool recommendations after that I maybe should have gone for, but this is what we're working with now. We got, oh my god, you see how crazy that peak was? The absolute robot aim peak. He just comes through, barely shows his face, keeps his crosshair incredibly steady, and it is always a pleasure, of course, to watch Rops clear angles. Because, again, it just feels like he is squeezing this ball of concentration so well at all times. And it just, wow, he gets another headshot. Like, what is that? And now they can intercept the players in alt, squeeze out the one on the site, and that's the bomb down. That is round 1, right? I think this is a situation that doesn't even come close. An incredible first round here from Rops. Followed up by some really awful movement here as Rops cannot get up onto the balcony. I'm just messing around. Rops is actually, I'm just going to repeat this, but he had the world long jump record in 1.6, which if there was an Olympics of KZ, the best example would be, this would be like the 100-meter dash of the Olympics. Like that is the most popular and impressive, and that's the most fawned over event to win in the Olympics, for better or worse. It's just nice and digestible. It's like a short thing. Everybody wants to know who's the fastest man on the planet. For KZ, that is the most kind of competitive and impressive thing that you can do, is set the world long jump record. I'd say that's a very, very competitive category. I got my long jump up to damn near 280 in CSGO, 279 something. And then as soon as they introduced the binds, I was like, I just quit. I was like, somebody else hit 280 before me, and I was like, screw this, screw the bind. They didn't split the stats up at that point. I was like, I'm done. But yeah, to have the world long jump record 1.6 is pretty goddamn impressive. Rops told me when I made a video about him a long time ago that people used to call him a cheater in 1.6 KZ as well. So the interesting thing about this map, and one of the other reasons why I wanted to leave the radar on in this game, was because in this game, the cubby position was everything from Mouse Sports. Okay, this is what got used. Oh wow, is he coming through this? He's throwing high flashes for the peak, and Oh, there was actually an opportunity to go through. Of course, he didn't know, but he's just throwing flashes over the rooftop so that his teammate in the back of the site could peek. And Frozen is, first of all, Frozen's an incredible quad player. Like, I was so shocked to see how good he was at delaying. He's like device levels of good at staying alive in this spot, delaying for as long as possible. But, okay, so far so good. Rops, he's going to come through with the hard clear potentially. Should be good, yes. And, yes, easy cleanup of the last two players. Very nicely done. Let's move on ahead. I think I have to rebind to make it so that my audio is a bit louder in-game. But it is just fine for now. So this is an alt grenade that lands outside. And look at the damage that's dealt there on Magisk. Let's go ahead and move on forward. And yes. As I said earlier, always a pleasure to watch a Rob's demo. Oh, this is interesting. I'm going to go ahead and turn the volume up here. I don't know if Device can win this. I don't know if Robs can win this, actually. Oh, no, this is one where Device actually throws this. I think he either 1v3s or 1v4. Look at how Device actually throws this round away. He goes mini pit. I was really shocked to see this. Like, the way I was casting was like, all right, this is done. But he was peeking from mini pit the whole time and just tried to fight this. From Rops' position, it doesn't look that bad. But when Device had planted the bomb, he knew that Rops was nowhere near the site. He took a really big risk by just playing it kind of standard, going to mini pit, and then taking that fight multiple times and losing. And he was in a position where he actually could have delayed quite a while. He was at risk of getting grenaded. But he also peeked from the mini pit to allow Rops his only way of getting info that early. If he had hid big pit, hid in graveyard, hid in apartments, hid tucked in sight, Rops would have taken forever. I mean, it's also Rops. He would have literally taken forever to make sure that he cleared out all his angles properly and would have happily walked away from the site if he couldn't find Device. And Device still tried to duel him. And it was just, it's such a strong Rops at the moment that was clearly not the best plan of action. I was really shocked to see Device kind of like tossed around like that. Too much confidence, I think, especially versus someone like Rops, who is just shooting hot today. So, again, we're going to pay attention to this cubby position that's getting really used every single round, and how the Mousesports are able to stay here uncontested for most of the situation. Most every situation, Rops comes through with a very nice spray transfer. I mean, it's clinical, of course. No wasted space, no overflicking, no panic in the movements. And now he opens up the ability to, again, cut through the attack and get into the Hall's Wrap as quickly as possible. See if he can pull out another kill. This would be pretty insane, to be honest, because Magisk has only got to worry about this one fight. But it looks like he does find the timing. And now there'll be one final moment here. And Robs, he'll also get that kill. Beautiful stuff. Just before the flash pops as well. The timing is absolutely impeccable. Yeah. You asked me who I like to watch more and who I think has more promise. I'm gonna say Rops over Nico. I think I think Rops is gonna be a part of a team that wins more in the future. As far as I'm concerned, I think he's on that trajectory a little bit more so than Nico. Just seems like bumpy road for Nico. He's got a lot to prove in terms of strengthening a team overall. And we'll see how that goes. But in terms of this year, I feel like I don't know, it's tough. I feel like Nico has shown kind of he's still a little bit more impactful most of the time, even in the harder situations, where I think that Robs cannot be because of his playstyle. I'm never going to call Robs one-dimensional, but I would only say that Nico is a bit more versatile in that regard. So, okay, 6-0. We've already seen some really... and I only say that, of course, because we've already seen some really sick stuff here from Robs. And we've got a couple of players peeking down mid. Let's see how he deals with this. Actually, 4 threats coming his way. And he's no longer fighting into Boiler. 38 HP. Still healthy enough to jump up actively onto the balcony. Okay, let's see how he plays this position. I'm a huge fan of playing on the balcony. Like, I love watching people's different ways of holding these angles and how they fight against the barrels and how they fight up against the door, whether or not they push up really close. And this is something where I'm like, okay, Rops looks like he's just trying to get in as the smoke clears a little bit to see if it gets cleared. And, oh, Zipex almost dies there. Definitely could have been a free kill if Gaben had said that he wanted Rops to get that kill, he would have got it. And he would have been 14-0. We can definitely see where the rating is coming from here. Even though BMAS is just putting up a higher volume of just more damage overall. Rops has been incredibly impactful in all of these rounds. Okay, and that is one kill, but no, Chris cannot trade as well. They still end up winning the round, and I think partly this is because of BMAS as well. So now we go back to the Cubby setup at mid. The thing that has been working out so well, and what's crazy about this is that Astralis never really catch on. And they fix it, and they come back and stomp Mousesports the next time. But in this game, this was just something that worked out very well. And actually, Vitality used this Cubby position versus Astralis on top of it. And Rops, he actually gets the dink off on the first guy, spray transfers, and then goes back to finish his food. Because, of course, he is not a wasteful gentleman. He's going to make sure to lock in his 2 kills before going for any more. That was one of those situations where you think you've got it. I wonder if that's a psychological effect sometimes where you're like, sure that you got a kill. Sometimes you get robbed by the game, no doubt. But sometimes you're like, sure you got a kill and you flick off. And it's like, man, did my brain really decide that quickly whether or not that player was supposed to be dead or not? Or is it just intuition or just like based on feeling? Like I've always wondered what that is actually in our minds that tells us whether or not we feel like the kill is done with. It feels like we don't need visual confirmation sometimes. Our minds decide even more quickly than that. Look at this Famas, by the way. How beautiful is this thing? The Eye of Athena. Skins are reaching just a new level. And, okay, we've got another position where we're playing inside the pit. Here we've got a semi-aggressive setup over towards long. It looks like the Astralis players are just on pistols here. So I'm not going to waste too much time, but they come in, they flank mid, they've controlled top bracket most of the time. It's looking very good. Okay, close mid setup again, and now Rops will have to save, it looks like. There's not going to be a rotate taking place. And we're back. Look at this Cubby again. Are we seeing this? He's never getting mollied in this spot. He shot them in the side of the head. It's so strange. Astralis never dealt with this. And look, another timing on the peak. A quick clap with the AK, and he's thinking about peeking again. Will he be? Oh my god, he outduels Chris. Or sorry, he outduels Magisk. He outduels Chris. And yeah, it's just nice clinical stuff. Crazy how he's able to get away with this. And this is why I actually think this game was a very game planned win. Right? This is where I want to give a lot of credit to Kerrigan or Mither for setting him up for success here on the CT side. I don't really know how they figured out that this was going to be so abusable, but look how often they're using it. And I think they fall off this boost without getting a kill, if my memory serves me correctly. But Kerrigan still is able to kill Dupree. Really nice. And look at this. Rops, I mean, he literally never leaves here, right? Now, finally, they Molotov out. This is, okay, so finally they Molotov this out and push him out. And this is where Glaive is finally starting to catch on. He's the one who threw that Molotov. But now they're still getting disrespected on the information. Rops is coming back to mid to gather up data. And see how his 2 teammates move on the site now that they have this data. But what happens? Astralis, they come back late for Arch. And Rops has made a bad rotation. So this was a really smart call by Astralis. However, they still cannot trade out effectively for the players on the site, and with less than 10 seconds left, they lose. And this is part of the reason why this game is such a stomp. 16-3 from beginning to end. And now we've got RAWPZ Rops trying to put in some impact on the CT side here with the op. One of the craziest, just like, you know, off the bench oppers in the game at the moment. Rops, it feels like he can actually just put together 4 or 5 kills in a round, no problem. He has insane first bullet accuracy. He's maybe a little too careful for his own good to pull this op out maybe on the T side, but on the CT side, goddamn, Rops is unstoppable. So, let's see what the deal is. It is still a death match in mid. My God. You just have to sit back and appreciate the absolute, like, peak of mechanical skill that Rops has. And, you know, of course, the same thing can be said for Nico. But that is going to be it. Waiting for launders to upload. Finally, upload is coming. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I was a lot of preamble. I had to add context to the whole situation. I really messed up and shaved too low on my beard. So now I got this weird-ass, like, Browntown, Brampton chin strap going on that I need to get rid of. But, yes. That's that. The mic sound good? Was the video good? Was it too much preamble? Are you looking forward to tomorrow's video? Let me know in the comments. Appreciate you guys. See you tomorrow. Merry Christmas.